Once again, let me greet you. My name is MIZOKAMI from the Center of the Promotion of Excellence in Higher Education of Kyoto University, and this is the theme that I'm going to discuss with you: identity as adolescent development, identity as capital. From the point of view of the adolescent psychology, the identity has been much researched. Giddens and late modernity, and this is many scholars say this is the age of identity or reconstruction of identity. That we have already that the good long history of this. For example, the Erickson has 50 years of the research, and so that identity is nothing new for the psychologists, adolescent psychologists. But on the other hand, whether this is a capital or not, this is a totally different story. That identity development still also exists in Japan and Europe, and for the scholars research, well, many of the researchers of the Western world says that this is not applicable to Japan. Of course it does. That the adolescent psychologist has been grappling with this idea of the identity, but whether the identity as a capital or not may be a new theme for the Japanese scholars, and this is a theme of our discussion. This is my speaker. I'm a psychologist researcher, and also that the professor center of the promotion of excellence of the higher education. I'm interested in the learning and the education of the students. So I would like to send the concentrate on the identity capital and the school. Inui-san and Kote-san, the professors, are given the free reign of that their contents of the research. And if I am given the similar reign of the freedom, as the Asano-san says, that the dual formation of identity or that self-documentation has been my main interest. But this is not, unfortunately, the theme given to me, and position from the professor of the Center for the Promotion of Excellence in Higher Education. I have to concentrate on adolescence and psychology and education. But anyway, first I would like to start with the identity as adolescent development, and I would like to link with the capital, or that identity possible with the capital. And then I would like to move into the two lives to promote the students' learning and the development. And and what are the measures of the identity? As Professor Asano says, that it is a very difficult challenge. Yes, indeed. How to measure that? The measures. Professor Kote has the maps and the other measures and yardsticks, which is appropriate of the psychology. However, that we are not that developed yet, and therefore that I would like to start with just posing the question to you. But on the other hand, not starting for the identity as a capital, I would like to discuss from the practical education, from the higher education on the ground level. And yes, indeed, that I can judge the behavior of the students from the capital or pseudo-capital, capital in terms of that trying to find the jobs, or the graduating, how to work, or what was the behavior at the office. I think that we can apply the social capital theory to this, the actual provision of the higher education, because that I have been studying for the past 4 years or so, so that I would like to discuss, especially with the educators, that the identity as a capital, that's something to benefit the students. First, my first topic is identity as an adolescent development. Psychologists take it as granted, but there are many people from the different backgrounds, so that I would like to give you the review. This is Erickson's adolescent theory of the identity formation. The research as an identity has the history of the 2,000 years on the day of back in the day of the Greek age. But the Erickson, especially for the Erickson's adolescent theory, is that the frontier researcher. And this is the position of identity researcher of the psychology. Who I am is something that ultimately that psychologically that people would like to understand or find out. However, the same continuous identity is a sameness. Same, therefore, that there are, assuming that the difference. And the difference of the identity, there is an oscillation. And how to, well, compromise that the oscillation is the part of the study, and the Erickson as a theory should understand from the point of view of the oscillation that Erickson has a two axis of explaining the digression. One is that from past to future, where I'm from and where I am, where I'm going, is the famous phrase, and from the teachers and the parents and the friends, and that the younger days, a definition is given, and during the adolescence, reflective cognitive power develops, and try to find your own identity, not that what the teacher says, not the parents tell you that who you are, that you would like to understand who you are by yourselves. And also for the future vision, that we have to reconstruct the past and the present, and thus that the time axis is consistent. And therefore, where there is a gap, that you try to find that the link of these, and try to, in order to establish the identity, even though that you understand who you are, that you have to understand the link with the community. Well, I think the Dr. Inui also touched upon that the others and who are the community members, that you have to have a good relation with them, or that you have to be recognized by the others, or that even though that you say that who I am, this is such, I'm such and such, and the community member says, no, you are not. And then your identity, that the conformity breaks or the continuity breaks, so that you try to find out or maintain the same psychological identity. But on the other hand, what is adolescent? We are talking about adolescent psychology. Adolescence, a historical understanding, did not exist from the back on the old day of history. And this is the quotation from the book that I published last year, that adolescence is one of the development period when the young people explore what adults they would become. So that the very important part of this is education regarding the occupation and the life. And this is a definition of the adolescence, which was formed in late 19th century to early 20th century. Before that, there are that they ascribed that the context was very important, that you inherited the status of the parents, or that the birth, good, or the lineage, or that the firstborn and secondborn, that or the man and woman, that the rewards and legitimacy based upon the position of the wealth and origin and the family lineage, that if your family lineage, or that you are the second and third born, that you have to leave the family, for example. And so that in the pre-modern society, that the status, or that the parents' status was very important, and then which moved into the meritocracy based upon the ability, performance, and academic background. So this became the beginning point of adolescent. The school and meritocracy, the human capital will be very important, which is much discussed today, and also social capital. Through the schools, that you have to acquire the networks or the social capital, or that the school cliques, if it will be very important for you, if it is beneficial. And human capital, social capital will create your life. And this is the significance of the school education understood, or that the significance of the meritocracy. Now, identity development of that adolescence is summarized as this, that identity formation is a modern topic. And in modern society, the new developmental dynamics and identity formation emerged from the young people began to criticize their parents and explore themselves and reconnect with the adult. In the pre-modern days, that we cannot reconnect, but Professor Kote says that in the paper, and also that was included in OHP today, that in a pre-modern ascribed identity, that is that the parents or that your predecessors decide your value system or the norms, and you have to identify with them, and so that these are the ascribed predetermined for you. And by aligning with these the norms of the previous generation, that you identify yourself. And in the modern society, through the school education, more or less that the parents or that community members or peers, sometimes that you are the same with them, or sometimes accommodate or not accommodate. And in order to form that the life, that you have to achieve the identity through the school education sometimes. And this is where the adolescence is established. And sometimes that you identify with the parents, and quite often that your self is different from the parents. You have to find it. It is your responsibility. And that if you are successful, you are the achievers, successful achievers. So this is the theme of the modern time. So this is the essence of the identity formation to the modern topic. Now, there is a very intriguing phenomena taking place. Very interesting to me. Before the bubble economy burst, or in 1990s or until 1990s, the modern identity formation were accepted or recognized. However, that the universities, it was not considered to be the university of create the identity for the students, or that, well, it was not a part of the university's jobs. Well, it's just up to that the students and the faculties. Well, reconnection is the individual's responsibility. However, that the current development defies this. For example, for one, dropping employment rate of the school graduates, and if that the employment rate of the graduates is very low, that less and less students are attracted to such universities, so that it's a university's job to try to find a job for the graduates. And partly that efforts is the commitment of that the identity formation of the students, and also the structural change of the industry, increasing non-regular workers rather than the regular workers, or the students do not understand of these change of the structure of the industry. Otherwise, that they are in a very lukewarm environment, and so that the universities are frustrated that the students are not very aware of the demanding environment or expected level of the skills and altitude of that the regular workers is going up. The competency is high, or the high competency is expected. And so that the university have to communicate this to the students, so that they have to brush up the skills further. And like this, from this angle, also that we can understand the adolescent period. Now let me digress a little. And in that the actual education of the university, or that job hunting, or there are the values which are influential, job hunting or the academic performance. And this is something that this is a very practical idea I have been postulating. So I would like to introduce to you some of the data. And we are producing the 2010 data, the renewing the data, so that gradually that I would like to update the data of my research. And Kyoto University and Dentsu Research are collaborating on for this college student survey. For the overall attitude of the college students is the gist of this the research. And we have taken the data of the 2010 in last November, and there isn't too much of the change. So this is a bio data. And we selected about 1,000 as the first year and third year of the different prefectures and the level of the universities, and try to balance out the data for the analysis. Now, the two life means a future life and present life. Future life and daily life, and two lives. And in terms of the career, that of course that you are interested in the future perspective, and future vision, and future life. In order to, well, paint the future vision of that yourself, many students do so. But through the interviews and doing the basic data taking analysis, I realized that some of the students have a strong vision, but not too many people are linking this vision to the daily life, and there is a gap between that what they dream into the future and what they are doing right now. So that I have been trying to quantify that what I have found out nationwide. And so using this index that I have been trying to take the data for drawing the picture of the two lives of the students. I would like to give you the general explanation. First, that do you have the outlook of the future or not? And if the answer is yes, do you understand what you should do for achieving that data, yes or no? They may understand, but they may not putting into the practice for day-to-day life. So that A type is that they have future perspective, understand what to do in daily life, and take action. And no perspective or that no actions or yes action or no action, or that understanding or not understanding. And this is the groundwork, as I have mentioned. And so that psychologically, that more detailed explanation is necessary. So that right now, exactly what we are doing, that using that the yardstick of psychology, the drill down on this that we are trying to do. But in the flow of the higher education, that the yardstick of the psychological yardstick is difficult to use, as some of the previous speakers said, and also especially that the general audience that usually that even though that we take time to explain of the yardsticks, that it is very difficult for that the general audience to follow me, and therefore that will intentionally very simplistic about the research, simplified explanation of research. My research is more complicated, but for that, the sake of understanding of the audience, I make that my explanation intentionally simplistic. 25% they have the perspective, understand, and take actions. Well, 20% and a half. However, the rest are that they have the vision, but they don't. They sometimes understand. One third of them that they don't take action. They say that they are too busy, no time to take action for the future dreams, and one fourth no future vision. And this are the, medical students have a good perspective. It's natural, but that the other field other than the medical 20%, but 50% in case of medicine, so that sometimes that we remove this data, the two lives of future and the daily life, how to link these two, that these variables are very influential in my opinion. Why? Well, one is that the motivation to study. You see that this is a version of the higher education. And as two of the lives, the independent variable, and A type, understanding the action, and no perspective, you can see that there's a significant difference. The other two are the depending. However, that A type, that understanding the action, has highly motivated, and next is the time for the studying. The 1 week, how many hours they spend was study. And all the students have to come to the class so that there are no significant difference of in-class study of the hours. But out of the class studies, for example, that the English conversation or the credentials, qualification studies, yes, A type of the students spend more time understanding the perspective and taking the specific actions. In 1 week, how do they spend? And we would like the students study, of course, but the interest in the study is not only that the interest of the study is not too much of the motivation of the student study, unfortunately, but when the study is something to do with the future, yes, sometimes that they are interested or forced to be to read books, for example, that they are more persuasive. Not only that the schools that this data includes that the other enjoyment and for the factors are analyzed out of the class studies and reading, internet, video games, and the cartoons, friendship, and club activities, and what is allocation of the time that the students will allocate by different type is something that we would like to classify. For classification of the students using the three indices, very characteristic is type 4. This category, compared with the other three, that they spend a lot of time for the friendship and club activities, that the rest of the two are relatively shorter. So this is a traditional, active, club-oriented or friendly students come to the university for the friendship building. Now, internet, game, and comics or friendship and club activities is very long. However, that type 1 is longer of this internet and video games so that they enjoy alone, not withdrawn. However, this type 1 spend a lot of time at home. And considering from these characteristics, type 2 is atypical. And what I'm paying attention to is type 3. Compared with the 3, and they have a long time. They spend a long time weekly for the out of the class study and reading, and plus a long time of internet, video games, and manga. Although that there is no statistical difference, and also the time for the friendship and club activities. Very active for play, active to study. Type 3 classified student comparing the variables. I think that this group of the students are very promising, interested in the future. You know that day-to-day lives, there is no statistical difference between the type 3 and 4. However, when it comes to future perspective or the skills or the knowledge to acquire through the out of the class, well, I'm spending too much of the time, but this is a type 3 very promising student type that I found out. So type 3, well-developed type 3 students are significantly more in A in the two lives than the other types of the students. I'm trying to, well, so understanding and action and type 3. And without type 1 and type 2 are mainly those the students without too much of the future vision. And type 3 is different with vision. So what becomes to them when they get to the fourth year, last year? Two lives is also influential of the finding of the jobs, understanding for the future vision and action. In last November, although it is finalized, but this is the follow-up research. 2007, the first year, is now becoming the fourth year. And we followed up the first year, second year, and third year, and fourth year this year. And this is the end already, the finish there, the job hunting activities, and we already know the results. And so that we did the cross-examination. And there is no statistical difference of the first year, but the second year and fourth year, there is a statistical difference. In the second year, the action and the performance, and many got the best jobs they hoped. And the third year in 2007 to 2008, and the fourth year is still that, yes, the conclusion is that those students started out with the vision and the action has a good prospect of the getting the jobs. And also that many of these students, type 3 students, are very active in the schools and the out of the class schools. And so that also that these variables are influential of the finding of the jobs. And then these variables can be that identical capital.
Now, I'd like to cover this as a leading to identity capital. Does identity become capital? I think I need to modify this question to tell my story. For one thing, a Japanese sense of identity. A sense of identity can be formed among Japanese, of course, but when we look at data, those having a higher sense of identity are not necessarily agentic in their personality. Um, they more psychological adjustments, such as the subjective well-being, purpose in life, and friendship. Those adjustment variables seem to have a higher correlation with a higher sense of identity for Japanese youth. So, go and get a type of personality with a high level of agency. Uh, More than that, a kind of a vague sense of identity with a good interpersonal relationship in daily life seem to have a high correlation with a psychosocial adjustment. And so identity development and whether identity can be a capital or not. Um, Study hours, for instance, which is reflected in our behavior and actions. Or whether or not we really have to take actions in order to have a successful outcome, and those parts need to be incorporated into the discussion concerning Japanese sense of identity. But so far, a higher agency does not necessarily lead to a higher performance out in the society. This is something which needs to be further discussed and analyzed, but that's one assumption I'd like to put forward. But our questions regarding identity capital cannot be stopped right there. We have to question the following way. Are there any relationship between the school activities or learning and development of students and the identity capital formation? And so I would like to modify the question as follows. First of all, students are learning and development through curricular and extracurricular study or activity related to identity formation. And second, does identity development affect job and life after graduation? Not just the subjective well-being or satisfaction with job, but identity development, I hope, is going to have a certain influence upon the job and life after graduation. And that somehow I would like to modify the questions concerning identity capital. Well, I guess I'm really running out of time. I have only 1 minute left. I would like to skip that one. And later in the panel discussion, if necessary, I would like to add some explanation. But identity, a sense of identity scores were studied on university students, but two lives having a future perspective and daily activities toward that future purpose. There seems to be a good correlation between the successful outcome upon graduation and the future perspective and having a daily actions toward it. But the sense of identity development has doesn't have a very high correlation with the outcome. When we think of identity development from the viewpoint of school to work, sometimes we need to question whether having a higher level of identity development, so what? For instance, I earlier looked at the high correlation between the in-class study and having two lives, future perspective, and daily activities. In the case of a relationship with the sense of identity, there is no clear-cut correlation between the higher sense of identity and the hours spent on out-of-class study or independent study. We need to gather more data in this respect, but our data so far are quite limited. But the same kind of trend can be found with the data using different scales. And so we couldn't find a very clear-cut correlation between the higher level of identity development and better performance or outcome upon graduation. And regarding the changes in identity during the 4-year time, we asked the 4-year students regarding how their identity status has changed over the years while they were in university. Achievement type, moratorium, foreclosure type, and diffusion type, what they were like when they were in the first year and how they have changed over the 4-year period. Each one is given a certain question or definition. For instance, a diffusion type is do not know what they or who they want to be and didn't even try to look for the answer, and so forth. And we try to find how their identity has changed in the 4-year time. There were 3 types of students we found through the survey. Some students, like 38.5% of the students, have remained the achieved type for 4 years. Professor Kote earlier mentioned that it is too late when we look at the university students, and that seems to be true. Their identity type remains more or less stable over the 4 years. And as a matter of fact, as you can see, there are so many percentage of students who remained achieved type, and there are a lot who changed on the moratorium or diffuse type over 4 years. But in the case of Japan, as you know, in the 3rd year, they had to begin looking for a job. As a result, some students make a big change from the diffused moratorium or achieved type. And they began to make their shift from the end of the 3rd year. And this, I hope, will lead to the identity formation or identity development. And of course, the successful outcome is that they were successful in getting the job they wanted. But as a matter of fact, until they reached the late 3rd year, they virtually remain the same. And diffuse type students in the 3rd year are not really proactive in reading or doing their own research. They are just doing what they were instructed to do by the faculty or mentors. But in the 3rd year, they make a dramatic change to a moratorium achieved type under the job-seeking pressure. Now, this group, you may say that it's good that those students remained achieved type for 4 years long, but as a matter of fact, about 40% of the students of this type were not able to find a good job even in November of the 4th year. As a result, this seems to suggest that even if they have a high level of identity development, it does not necessarily mean that they are able to get a good job upon graduation. And this seems to complicate the discussion concerning identity capital for the Japanese students. But as a matter of fact, the students who are able to have a future perspective and doing the daily activities toward the perspective seem to have a high development of identity. And those are the factor analysis done by Dr. Hatano of my group. It will be clear if a higher level of development will lead to a successful outcome in a job search or academic process performance, but there is no direct positive correlation between the two. But only when they are mediated by choice or exploration innovation, then we can find a positive correlation to academic performance. So the summary is as follows. This is what I've already said. The identity development does not necessarily lead to a capital. And this seems to suggest that identity development does not necessarily lead to agency construction. But although my explanation is not sufficient, according to the analysis done in our lab, When a personal agency, which was defined by Professor Akote, for instance, innovation and will to change their course of life, when mediated by a personal agency of this kind, then identity development seems to have a indirect positive correlation with the performance. So there are two important practical suggestions I need to make for educators in higher institutions. That is the viewpoint of two lives. What is important for educators in university education is to encourage students to have two lives, that is, a future perspective and taking actions toward it in their daily life. And that means that they will be forced to make identity formation. So I have no further summary, and for further details, I would like you to read my books. Thank you very much. I would like to apologize, Professor Matsushita, for my